The Villisca Axe Murder House in Villisca, Iowa, is a well-known tourist attraction for ghost hunters and horror lovers alike. The site of a gruesome, unsolved 1912 murder in which 6 children and 2 adults had their skulls completely crushed by the axe of an unknown perpetrator was purchased in 1994, restored to its 1912 condition, and converted into a tourist destination. It cost $428 a night to stay at the old haunted home, where visitors always report strange paranormal experiences, such as visions of a man with an axe roaming the halls or the faint screams of children. In November of 2014, the haunting took a darker turn. Robert Stephen Larson, Jr., 37, of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, was on a regular recreational paranormal visit with friends when true horror struck. Vice stated his companions found him stabbed in the chest, an apparently self-inflicted wound, called 911, and Larson was brought to a nearby hospital before being helicoptered to Creighton University Medical Center in Omaha. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office said Larson suffered the self-inflicted injury at about 12:45 a.m., which is around the same time the 1912 axe murders in the house began. Larson recovered from his injuries, but has never spoken publicly about what occurred that day. For Martha Lynn, the owner of the home, the incident was very upsetting. It's publicity, but it's not exactly the kind of publicity you desire to have. I don't want people thinking that when they come to the Villisca Axe Murder House, something's going to happen that's going to make them do something like that. The house remains open for tourist visits and overnight stays today. When you think of haunted dolls, it's likely the creepy old Victorian-looking porcelain kind that comes to mind, none of which you probably have lying around. Still, don't get too comfortable around any kids' toys too soon though. A Disney Frozen Elsa doll that was gifted for Christmas in 2013 in the Houston area made headlines when it seemingly became haunted. Per KPR C2 Houston News, the doll recited phrases from the movie Frozen and sang "Let It Go" when a button on its necklace was pressed. For 2 years, it did that in English, Mother Emily Madonia said. In 2015, it started doing it, alternating between Spanish and English. There wasn't even a button that changed these, it was just random. The family has owned the doll for more than 6 years and never changed its batteries. The mother says the doll would randomly begin to speak and sing, even with its switch turned off. The family decided to throw the creepy doll out in December of 2019. Weeks later, they found it inside a bench in their living room. The kids insisted they didn't put it there, and I believe them because they wouldn't have dug through the garbage outside, Madonia told KPR C2 Houston News. At that point, Elsa ceased to sing the English rendition of Let It Go altogether, speaking only Spanish when pressed. The family then double-bagged the bizarre doll and placed it at the bottom of their garbage, which was taken out on garbage day. They went on a trip shortly after. But when they returned, Elsa too had come back and was waiting in the backyard of their home. This time, the family mailed Elsa to a family friend in Minnesota who taped the haunted doll to the front bumper of his truck. It doesn't seem to have made its way back to Houston yet, as per Madonia's latest February Facebook update on the creepy doll. In August 2016, in North London, 26-year-old Kennedy Ife began acting strange and aggressive following a pain in his throat. He had reportedly bit his father, threatened to cut off his own penis, and complained of a python or snake inside of him before his family restrained him to a bed with cable ties and excessive force. The BBC reported the family then set about attempting to cure Kennedy through restraint and prayer over the next 3 days, the court was told. His brother, Colin Ife, told police, "It's clear that thing was in him. What we believed was a demon because it was not natural. It was clearly trying to kill him," he said. "We had to restrain him for himself. It was clear if we didn't restrain him, he could have tried to harm people in our family." Kennedy Ife had been bound to his bed for 3 days without medical attention when his brother called emergency services, explaining that Kennedy Ife was complaining of dehydration. He appeared to have developed breathing issues and was pronounced dead at 10:17 a.m. As the Independent reported, while police were at the house, Colin Ife allegedly carried out an attempted resurrection by chanting and praying for Mr. Ife. All 7 of Kennedy Ife's family members were accused of manslaughter, false imprisonment, and causing or allowing the death of a vulnerable adult. A post-mortem examination revealed over 60 wounds, including a possible bite on Kennedy Ife's body, and his father, Kenneth Ife, along with 4 of his brothers, sustained injuries as well. The BBC reported Kenneth Ife told jurors he ordered his sons to take shifts and use overwhelming force, but denied that an association with cults, occults, and secret societies played any part in the death. After a 4-day jury deliberation, all 7 family members were cleared of charges on March 14, 2019. When the Brettswees family decided to insulate their home in Auburn, Pennsylvania in 2015, they discovered it had already been, with scores of dead animal carcasses. As Fox reported, the dead animals were wrapped in newspapers from the 1930s and 40s and were among half-used spices and other items. After removing the items, they sent hundreds of artifacts and carcasses to an expert in Kutztown. The expert attributed the rotting animals in their walls to powwow or Dutch magic, a ritual originating in the culture of the Pennsylvania Dutch to treat ailments and gain physical and spiritual protection. The Pennsylvania Dutch were a group of German-speaking settlers to Pennsylvania in the 1600s and 1700s and are often of Lutheran, Mennonite, or Amish faith. The Washington Post notes on the magic, many of the spells deal with the care of livestock, finding water, or the treatment of minor ailments, reflecting the conditions and concerns of early American settlers. But powwow also has within it a tradition of darker spells, and even of such things as conjuring demons. One notable ritual in their tradition is this hex to create loyalty in a dog. To attach a dog to a person, provided nothing else was used before to effect it, try to draw some of your blood and let the dog eat it along with his food, and he will stay with you. The mold found on the rotting carcasses in the Britsuzi's home has caused illness among the family members, and they say that the odor hasn't gone away. Friends noticed that Danielle Harkins, a 35-year-old schoolteacher near St. Petersburg, Florida, started acting strangely in June of 2012, developing an interest in demonic rituals. Soon after, she was arrested for abuse of 7 of her former students, as the Tampa Bay Times reported. Danielle Harkins told the kids they needed to rid their bodies of demons as the group gathered before dusk Saturday around a small fire near the St. Petersburg Pier. They should cut their skin to let the evil spirits out, police said she told the children. Then they needed to burn the wounds to ensure that those spirits would not return. When Harkins held a lighter to one teen's hand, wind blew the flame out, police said. That prompted her to douse his hand in perfume before setting it on fire. The boy suffered second-degree burns, police said. Another teen was cut on the neck with a broken bottle. Harkins used a flame to heat a small key, which she then used to cauterize the wound. The police were notified because a friend of one of the students who participated in the ritual raised alarms. However, none of the students themselves told their parents about the event or would comment following the arrest of Harkins for aggravated battery and child abuse. NBC reported investigators said they've spoken to Harkins, but she didn't spell out what type of religion would require such drastic measures. She hasn't informed us exactly what she was trying to accomplish with this, Puetz of the St. Petersburg Police Department said. In September of 2014, a Utah teen returned to his home to find his parents and 3 siblings dead. In a notebook, a to-do list had been scribbled on the pages. The list looked as if the parents were readying to go on a vacation. Items such as feed the pets and find someone to watch after the house were written. The Salt Lake Tribune reported it appeared to be a murder-suicide, but there was no suicide note, no prior indication that they would do this, no explanation. Police could not figure out why 2 parents would kill themselves and 3 of their 4 children. For a year, no one knew exactly what happened to the family or what would drive the parents to do something so unthinkable. In January, police released more chilling details in the case. According to accounts from family members and an investigation by police, the parents were driven by a belief that the apocalypse was coming and an obsession with a convicted killer. Friends and family told police that the parents were worried about the evil in the world and wanted to escape a pending apocalypse, but most assumed they just wanted to move somewhere off the grid. Investigators also found letters written by Christy Strack to one of the state's most infamous convicted killers, Dan Lafferty, who was convicted in the 1984 fatal stabbing of his sister-in-law and her one-year-old daughter. According to trial testimony, he killed the victims at the order of his brother, Ron Lafferty, who claimed to have had a revelation from God. The story became a book called Under the Banner of Heaven. Police said Christy Strack became friends with Dan Lafferty, and she and her husband even visited him in prison. In 2007, ABC News documented a series of cell phone calls to families with terrifyingly specific death threats. The unidentified callers knew exactly what the families were doing and what they were wearing. The families say the calls come in at all hours of the night, threatening to kill their children, their pets, and grandparents. Voicemails arrive, playing recordings of their private conversations, including one with a local police detective. The caller knows, the family said, what they're wearing and what they're doing, and after months of investigating, police seem powerless to stop them. This went on with the Kuykendall family for months, who reported a caller with a scratchy voice threatening to slit their throats. When the Faircrest, Washington police tried to find the culprit, the calls were traced back to the Kuykendall's own phones, even when they were turned off. It got worse. The Kuykendalls and two other Faircrest families told ABC News that they believe the callers are using their cell phones to spy on them. They say the hackers know their every move, where they are, what they're doing, and what they're wearing. The callers have recorded private conversations the families and police had, including a meeting with a local detective. The Indianapolis Star published a lengthy report on a family terrorized by 3 children allegedly possessed by demons. The account of Latoya Ammons and her family tells disturbing stories of children climbing up the walls, getting thrown across rooms, and children threatening doctors in deep, unnatural voices. It would seem like something straight out of a movie, a work of fantasy, except all of these accounts were more or less corroborated with nearly 800 pages of official records obtained by the Indianapolis Star and recounted in more than a dozen interviews with police, DCS personnel, psychologists, family members, and Catholic priests. One of the more chilling sections of the report includes a segment about the possessed 9-year-old. According to Washington's original DCS report, an account corroborated by Walker, the nurse, the 9-year-old had a weird grin and walked backward up a wall to the ceiling. He then flipped over Campbell, landing on his feet. He never let go of his grandmother's hand. Another segment of the piece reads, the 12-year-old would later tell mental health professionals that she sometimes felt as if she were being choked and held down so she couldn't speak or move. She said she heard a voice say she'd never see her family again and wouldn't live another 20 minutes.